Welcome, everyone. It is Arki Hodges here, President of the Black Achievement Fund, and thank you for joining us for another edition of Black Achievement Fund's info session, in which we talk about what the Black Achievement Fund is all about and implore you to join us. But we also talk about things that are important to our community. Today, we are going to be talking about education as liberation, and trying to get to a point where we, as a group of people, can establish some type of educational curriculum, national, international educational curriculum that is easy to access, that is affordable for everyone to access. But we are in a time in which, once again, all of the civil rights gains, including inclusion in curricula, including the observance of Black History Months and the inclusion of Africana Studies departments and programs on college campuses all across the country, there was a fight for that. Colleges and universities across the country didn't just decide in the 60s that, you know what, we've heard the Black masses and we think it'll be a great idea to begin establishing Africana and African American studies departments in our colleges and universities. Do you think that came from the universities? No. That came from students protesting at these colleges and universities all across the country. That came from the outpouring of the greater civil rights movement, in which the students were saying, you know what, we're in these colleges and we need to have more representation. We're saddled with all of this white history that mocks us, that excludes us, and we want to make sure that our history is shared, is known, and is just as relevant as everyone else's history is. As a Africana historian, as an educator, a teacher, teaching Africana history has been dear to my heart for a very, 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 very long time, for as long as I can remember. When I was in undergrad at the University of Virginia, trying to decide what to major in, the only classes that I had enjoyed thoroughly up until that point were my African American Studies classes. And I remember sharing that I was going to major in African American Studies, thinking that, you know, I'd get the same level of praise that other students were getting when they declared their major, no matter what it may be, whether it's anthropology or sociology or psychology or history or what have you. When I shared that I was majoring in African American Studies, people in my own family called me up and implored me to reconsider. They were concerned for me. They were concerned that I wasn't going to go and waste this good white education by studying Black people. Because after all, who cares about Black people? You're in a society, you're going into an economy that don't really care about Black people, don't want to be reminded about African history, African American history, don't want to be reminded about slavery. And then they're going to carry these connotations, these negative connotations. If they see African American history, African American studies on your resume, they're going to think you're a troublemaker. What are you going to do with an African American Studies degree? And then I said, well, what are you going to do with an anthropology degree? What are you going to do with a history degree? What are you going to do with an English degree? What are you going to do with a degree in the classics? And what I realized was that the level of propaganda against Black history was so pervasive and so deep that even people in our own community, in our own families, was suggesting that the study of it would actually destroy what could be a promising career. This is true. This is true. Now, with Donald Trump signing executive orders to cleanse American history books in American classrooms of any negative element of American history.
Huh.
And now, those same people who were compelling me to not study African American history want to call, and I see them on social media and this and that. And I'm like, this is what we fought for. This is what our ancestors wanted us to have our own education programs for, so that we can develop our own narratives, so that we could have the legitimacy of the academy, so that our words meant something, had weight. My granddaddy said, never listen to nothing you hear out people's mouth. That's who they want to be. Watch their actions. That's who they are. You have so many of us who would readily say, we need more Black history taught. We need more Black history taught. We need more Black history taught. But bring them Black history in a curriculum. How many are embracing it? And I'm sharing this as a cautionary tale, not to call anybody out, but the education of our people, the righteous education of African people, is critical in developing the consciousness to fight oppression. It's critical to being able to see oppression, to see the invisible hand. If we don't know who we are, we will be who they say we are. That's a quote from Dr. Ivan Van Sertima that I started using. And what's happening is that there has been a reshaping of American history. And it didn't just start with Donald Trump. It started as far back as 2012 that I've been monitoring. And through Education for Life Academy, for those of you who followed me, I even did a whole class and made it part of our curriculum on the ways in which education has become more and more whitewashed. In that class, I shared multiple instances of this happening. I shared multiple fights all across the country with people battling this new conservative ideology that is being pushed. I'm going to play something right now, just talking about where we are as a nation right now with what Donald Trump is doing. Okay, hold on. But we have to absolutely educate ourselves, absolutely educate ourselves. And it's been imperative that we educate ourselves even when desegregation was over. That didn't mean that we were now all of a sudden included wholeheartedly in American curricula. But we're at a point now, can you guys see my screen? Okay, all right. Sorry, 1 second. Why is this? Okay.
President Trump is ordering a full review of one of the nation's most cherished museums after saying it focuses too much on, quote, how bad slavery was. And he wrote this: "The Smithsonian is out of control, where everything discussed is how horrible our country is, how bad slavery was, and how unaccomplished the downtrodden have been. Nothing about success, nothing about brightness, nothing about the future. And we are not going to allow this to happen. And I have instructed my attorneys to go through the museums and start the exact same process that has been done with colleges and universities," end quote. For more on this, I want to bring in Ibram X. Kendi, a professor of history at Howard University here in Washington. Ibram, thanks so much for joining us. First of all, what's your reaction to this latest post about the Smithsonian from President Trump?
Well, first, I would say most of our public museums in the United States actually do not show how truly bad slavery was, because I think most Americans can't handle just the sheer agony, the sheer terror, the sheer violence it took to keep people enslaved their whole lives, laboring against their will, or to, most Americans can't really handle the agony of seeing children taken from their parents, or seeing the amount of terror that was required to keep millions of people enslaved. And so that, to me, as an historian, is actually what's quite interesting about this notion that it shows it's the way that the Smithsonian is presenting slavery.
I want you to listen, Professor, to what President Trump actually said. And I remember this back in 2017, during his first term. He had just been elected president, when he visited the National Museum of African American History and Culture here in Washington. Listen to this.
This museum is a beautiful tribute to so many American heroes. It's amazing to see. We did a pretty comprehensive tour, but not comprehensive enough. So Lonnie, I'll be back. I told you that. Because I could stay here for a lot longer, believe me. It's really incredible. This tour is a meaningful reminder of why we have to fight bigotry, intolerance, and hatred in all of its very ugly forms.
So what do you think, Professor? What do you think changed from then, back in 2017, to now?
So what changed is the problem. And so now this president is insinuating that the problem are those people who are trying to accurately render this nation's past. While back in 2017, the quote unquote problem was much more, was different. And I think, so the politics of the now, the politics, of this moment has been to essentially defend enslavers, has been to make it seem as if slavery wasn't that bad, to make it seem as if everyone was against slavery, when in actuality, most Americans who are anti-slavery were as rare and ridiculed as Americans today who are striving to be anti-racist.
Ibram X. Kendi, thanks so much for joining us, Professor of History at Howard University.
He was very gracious in how he handled the question. But essentially, the Trump that we saw in the first presidency and the Trump that we've seen in this presidency are light years apart. Trump waited for his last term to show his true colors and to truly make his mark felt. And I think him losing that election to Joe Biden took him from being just a racist to a super dangerous and vindictive racist. Who is responsible, ultimately, for a people's history? It's the people themselves. It can't be a government. And it can't be a foreign government. And the American government is just as much a foreign government to black people. We didn't ask to be a part of this. You were made a part of this. What the professor from Howard said was that America, meaning white America, is not ready in 2025 to still deal with the horrors of enslavement. In 2025, that we're still not ready to face the truth. I scrolled the comments because I love reading the comments, and somebody said, imagine if he would have said that about the Holocaust. Imagine if he would have said that too much focus on World War II is centered on the Holocaust. Every time you read about the Holocaust, it just talks about how bad everything. African people, there has always been a heavy, heavy, heavy impulse by the white majority, those in power. There has been an agenda to suppress the talent and the success of black people. It's damn near anti-American to embrace it. Because the other element that isn't discussed is the level of embarrassment that African American history presents. We don't talk about that. They talk about the shame that white people feel. But it's also embarrassment. It's also embarrassment. Because what African American history shows is that you tried your very best to render them permanent slaves for you. You tried to poison their mind into believing that they had a divine purpose to serve white people and they love it. After doing all of that, selling their children, raping the women, emasculating the men, forcing people to work day in and day out for free, making it illegal for a person to even learn how to read. That's evil. That's beyond wrong, but that's the shame part. The embarrassment part is, how could you have had African Americans so completely enslaved, mentally and physically, that they managed to use words to sing and dance and fight and claw their way, not just out of enslavement, but to rise as equals and to demonstrate brilliance surpassing white people in many instances. That's the embarrassment. So many of the lynchings that Sister Ida B. Wells investigated were economic lynchings, were lynchings of white competitors in business. One of her good friends, Thomas Moss, who owned a prosperous store, was lynched because his competition, his white competition, could not outcompete him. So they lynched him. And when she began to travel all throughout the South, and this is one of the classes that we offer in our new Breaking Barriers series. And every investigation that I'm talking to you about, she wrote about it in the Red Book. That book is free as a free ebook within the Breaking Barriers curriculum. Read for yourself. The destroying of prosperous black towns, Black Wall Streets and Wilmingtons and Rosewood, we all know that that was over embarrassment. How can we let these black people come here and build such a prosperous community without us? How dare they build a store better than ours? How dare they? The American school system is centered on providing a narrative of American history that canonizes evil. They made villains into saints. They did everything they could to dress up their tyranny, to make it legitimate, to make it so that in 2025, the United States of America that you see is a nation that should be proud of itself, that is a nation that is embracing of all people all over the world. We're a leader in this, we're a leader in that. The reality of America is far from what's painted. And as the professor said, the museums don't even show nowhere near the barbarity of slavery. If you go into the Smithsonian Institute, the Museum for African American Studies at the Smithsonian, and then go to the Holocaust Museum, please, go visit them in the same day. And you tell me which one makes you feel shameful. Which one is focused almost exclusively on the horrors and the terror of the history? Black people, black people, black people. What does the history of black people do for young black people? I'll ask you this. What did reading about Assata Shakur or Malcolm X, what did learning the things that, that was taught from us by our scholars, what did that do for you? How did it help you? Did it not? Every single time you have read a book about your history, every single time you have learned something empowering about your people, it has helped to grow you in a positive way. Every single time. So if these are the facts, then it would make sense as to why this history shouldn't be told. Do you want confident black people who know that their history is not to be shamed, but it's the people who did to us what they did? Those are the ones who should be shamed. When people study and see how we outsmarted whites, outmaneuvered them, how we used our words and moral suasion to slowly but surely eat away at the fabric of enslavement. It's almost like how the Western world still hates Haiti for destroying the myth of the African being able to liberate themselves. The Haitians outmaneuvered the French, the English, and the Spanish to gain control over Haiti. And they haven't forgotten since. I hate to say it, but as long as we share this land here in America, there is going to be a large contingent of white people who believe that we don't deserve the right to be equal. We don't deserve the right to be in social spaces that white people be in, that we are somehow degenerate, that we are somehow inferior. And these are people who are listening to hate mongers. You have a whole propaganda machine, and you all can pick up your social media and readily find some of these outlets. And they end up blaming all of their problems on Black and brown people. They end up scapegoating all of their problems on Black and brown people. And these narratives are given to select people to go and spread and propagate. When you look at Charlie Kirk, he was given $4.7 million by a billionaire to go across college campuses, spreading ideology. A direct example of how higher ups puppeteer everybody else and keep us divided. Educating ourselves is one of the most important things that we can do, not only for ourselves, but for our children as well. And I'm going to tell you why. When you study African history, and study it, not from a history book given to you in a public school classroom, but by an independent African historian. I don't care if it's me or whoever you may look at. The one thing you're going to find over and over again is what I said earlier. We outsmart, outwit, outmaneuvered white supremacists all the way through. The narrative that all Black people were enslaved, rock, stock, and barrel is absolutely untrue. The narrative that we just submitted to enslavement, accepted our enslavement, embraced our enslavement, that slavery wasn't that bad, none of that stuff is true. So here, the Education for Life Academy and the Black Achievement Fund, we are working very diligently to make sure that our people, that you, have access to empowering versions of world history, of Africana history, of African American history. Because once again, we believe that it is our job to educate our children. And to think that our oppressors are going to provide our children with the liberating, empowering education is absolutely crazy of us. It's shameful and it is embarrassing. It is shameful and it is embarrassing. They're right about that part. They're right about the teaching of American history. Slavery built this country. So you can't talk about American history without talking about the economics that grew it to be the world superpower. How can you talk about American history without talking about enslavement? How can you talk about American history without talking about the contributions that African Americans made to the development of this country? They don't mind talking about it if they can whitewash it. They don't mind talking about it if they can successfully make it seem as if it wasn't that bad. And that is the new narrative that is being pushed, that slavery wasn't that bad as you guys are making it out to be. All members of the Black Achievement Fund have access to Education for Life Academy curricula. We are revamping our missing pages of world history curriculum, in which we start from world history from the origins of humanity to the fall of ancient Kemet. We'll have that back up and running in a couple months, but we're trying to make it more engaging, more lively, that sort of thing, as we've done with our Breaking Barriers African American curriculum series. So for those of you who are Black Achievement Fund members, I wanted to once again let you all know that we have this remarkable new educational resource for all of our members, and is free to Black Achievement Fund members to access to curriculum. You go to our website and you are going to go to our members only page. And as you scroll down our members only page, you will see here our free member benefit, and simply hit enter. And it will take you to the series. The Breaking Barriers African American History Education Series, Volume 1, was created to highlight some of the lesser known Black heroes and heroines from our history. When I began to refocus on studying African American history, because I'd taken a 20-year break actually from studying African American history and focused primarily on ancient African history and diasporic history. But in returning to African American history, there were so many people from our past that I had never heard of. Even though I majored in African American studies, got my master's in Africana studies, there are so many of our stories that are still lost. And they're lost primarily because they are absolutely, some of them, unbelievable. For one, Captain Robert Smalls was enslaved during the Civil War, working on a Confederate warship. He overheard that the crew had planned on staying the night ashore when their families came to visit, and decided that he was going to steal the whole warship. I mean, you're in a secure fort where you have to pass all types of hand signals, have certain clothes on, all of these things to get through I believe it was like 4 different fortified garrisons to get out of the bay and to get into freedom. And here you got this Black guy who had studied the captains, stole the coat and the hat, and proceeded to take a whole Confederate warship in the middle of the night, stole it, and took it to freedom. Got paid a reward for surrendering a Confederate warship to the Union, and took the reward money, went back to South Carolina, and bought his master's house that he had worked in as an enslaved person. And later, this same man becomes one of the first Black men in Congress during Reconstruction. So when you read about this and you hear that an enslaved person was able to steal under the nose of the whole Confederacy a Confederate warship and picked up his boys and their families on the way, these are the empowering stories that they don't want you to hear about. Lewis Hayden, guardian of the Underground Railroad. Lewis Hayden escaped enslavement in Kentucky with the help of a white minister and a teacher. The white minister and the teacher got caught. The white minister got 15 years, the woman got 2 years. After Lewis Hayden hears of this, he works for almost 5 years to raise money to get the minister released. In the meantime, he becomes the head of the Underground Railroad in Boston. His house was one of the most important stops on the Underground Railroad. He was party to freeing and helping to escape so many fugitive enslaved Africans after the 1950 Fugitive Slave Law. He was even tried for breaking a black man named Chadwick Minkins, who had escaped slavery from Virginia and was recaptured in Boston under the Fugitive Slave Act. And he went, got a bunch of black folks and some sympathetic white people, and just like the mobs went in the South and broke black men out of the jails to hang them, these men in Boston went to the courthouse, physically broke Chadwick Minkins out of the jail and freed him. Broke him out of the jail and freed him. Out of all the people, this infuriated President Fillmore at the time. It was a major, major, major big deal. And Lewis Hayden was on trial for his life. And guess what? One of the white men on the jury, it came to be found out months later, was the same person who Chadwick Minkins' house he was being sheltered at. So one other part, and the reason why I mentioned this story, is that there is another element of missing history that I've seen through restudying African American history. And that is the help of some white people. When I started reading about the Underground Railroad, I realized that there couldn't be an Underground Railroad without the help of white people. When I started reading about the Civil War again, when I started reading about the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, when I started reading about the radical Republicans, what I began to see was that there was a bona fide thread of white activists against enslavement from the onset of enslavement, and that they have been washed out of history right along with black people. Why? The same reason. The powers that be want all white people to believe that all white people shared the shame of slavery, and therefore all white people should fight together to purge themselves of that burden by whitewashing history. That is the narrative. But the reality is that for the white people who have been fighting against racism, the white people who've been fighting against discrimination and bigotry and all of those things, they've always existed. They've always existed. And there have been countless of them. But by removing them from the history books, you leave white people, all white people, even if they don't believe in racism, to believe that they have to also carry the burden of it, when there is an alternative narrative that releases them of that burden. You can identify with the white people who were against enslavement. I don't know how many of you all know the history of Cassius Clay. Is there anybody here who knows the history of Cassius Clay? Well, he's in one of our upcoming volumes. When I read the history of Cassius Clay, the man that Muhammad Ali's mother named him after, I was absolutely floored. This man, Cassius Clay, was so anti-slavery that he went throughout the South challenging us enslavers to duels and killed every single person he ever challenged to a duel. He would go around the country on anti-enslavement speeches. Whites had even hired an assassin from Texas to go and kill him. The assassin showed up at one of his speeches, shot him in the chest, but he had a knife there, so it kind of protected him. And he was still able to fight to get to the assassin and kill the assassin. A group of 6 brothers came to one of his speeches to kill him. Ended up going through all 6 brothers. When his cousin, his second cousin, Henry Clay, was running for president, he was advising him on anti-slavery matters. He knew Lincoln. He had fought in the Mexican-American War. So he had become a war hero because he and his squadron had gotten caught. And some had tried to run away. So they were going to kill all of them, all the prisoners of war. So Cassius Clay steps up and says, you know, we're the leaders here. We told them to try to escape. So just kill me and let all the rest of them go. And they were so impressed, they let him go. When the war was over, he fought for the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment and helped establish Berea College, one of the first colleges that admitted Black people. And as I think about education, as I think about what has been happening in education, as I think about how the people at top manipulate everybody at the bottom into fighting against each other, into separating natural allies. So this missing pages of world history, while I've exclusively talked about it in terms of the African history that has been omitted, I'm realizing that it's white history that's been omitted too. And then I said to myself, Arkey, what if you had a whole generation of white people reading about badasses like Cassius Clay, reading about people like John Brown and their sons, reading about people like Wilberforce, reading about people like Thaddeus Stevens, who helped write the 13th and 14th and 15th Amendment and was so against segregation and enslavement and all of those things that he demanded to be buried in a Black cemetery. The powers that be do not want white people having access to these white people who risk their lives and reputations to help end the evil which was slavery. When I think about what I studied about enslavement, I didn't learn about any of those people. Even as I studied, I said, okay, you knew a lot about the Underground Railroad. I didn't know it was just me and white people helping. And as I began to create this curriculum, and almost all of these Black people that I'm going through, I'm seeing behind them was a nameless white person as well. Now, that's not to say that white people took the lead in liberating African people. But I just want to be clear in my analysis. And my analysis is that the missing pages of world history, of American history, is not just Black history, but it's also the history of any white people that tried to help us. They don't want white people to know that so many white people risked their lives and freedoms, their careers to help Black people. Why? Because that will inspire another group of those type of people. No. We want all white people to be united under the shame of enslavement and oppression, and we want all white people to work together to legitimize our actions. But we don't want to expose the white masses to countless white people who stood up against enslavement, and fought and risked reputation and career and life. Because what would that do? That would encourage new generations of those people. Educating ourselves is not just for Black people. I'm saying every group in this world needs to have some type of curriculum that preserves their history from their perspective. Everyone. We all know the African phrase, it's the lion hunter who writes the lion's history. We all know that. When I think about the Native Americans, and I drive all throughout Georgia, going to and from the land, and I see all of this expansive land. And I'm saying to myself, all of this land used to belong to indigenous people. Now we have no idea who these indigenous people are. We have no idea of their worldview, their way of life. We don't have any of that. Those people have been successfully vanquished, and their narrative, their history, have been written by the people who conquered them. We have a responsibility to educate ourselves and to educate our children, especially when we know that there is a real threat of our history being 100% erased. 100% erased. In our curriculum, we got Moses Dixon, a man who planned a revolution. And it is said that he worked for over a decade organizing Black people, setting up secret societies of insurrectionists, and was ready to call the day to launch this major revolution, but learned that the Civil War was approaching and felt confident that the Civil War would be the thing to end all slavery. No one knows anything about him. He ended up becoming a war hero. He used his network of Black, quote unquote, spies to help the Union during the Civil War. When you talk about the women, we've learned about Elizabeth Wright, who at 24 years old founded a Black college. But it wasn't so much that she founded the college at such an early age, which is absolutely remarkable in and of itself, but the trials and tribulations she had to go through. She went to South Carolina, of all places, to start a school during Reconstruction, or after Reconstruction. Town after town, she would get a school established, the Klan would burn it down. They burnt down over 5 schools that she tried to establish all throughout South Carolina. Most of us would stop after the first burnt down school. She kept going, and she kept going, and she kept going. And every school that they burnt just gave her that much more determination to succeed in what she was going to do. And she finally succeeded in getting hold to a patch of land and getting a philanthropist to help secure the land and buy all the land for the school. And she ended up naming the university after the philanthropist, Voorhees. But this woman was also battling chronic stomach issues, to which, she had to go and spend months at a time in a sanitarium. You talk about Ida B. Wells Barnett, fearless journalist and anti-lynching crusader. One of our members shared with me that they had learned about Ida B. Wells here in Georgia in high school, but didn't learn anything about her anti-lynching crusade. I said, well, if you ain't learned anything about that, what did you learn about her? That she was a part of the women's voting rights movement. This woman black woman in her 20s went throughout the South by herself, showing up in towns where lynchings had occurred and started investigating all of these lynchings in the towns in which they happened. Imagine how fearless you have to be in the 1880s, 1890s to go throughout the South demanding answers about lynching, protesting the causes why a black person was lynched and exposing the real cause. And she would call it plain, the real cause was that that white woman wanted him. And her husband couldn't take it. The real cause was that they were jealous that he grew the best cotton in town and they couldn't figure it out. By herself. By herself. Created a pamphlet during the World's Fair. Stood outside the fair and passed hundreds and hundreds of pamphlets talking about the lies that white people put up to justify lynchings. As a woman by herself. Using her own money to get the stuff printed. Maggie Walker, one of the first African-American females to found a bank. But she not only found a bank, she also found the only department store in Richmond's all-white downtown area, saying, we'll be in any space that we want to be in, and we belong in every space in this country. And you're talking the 1920s. Imagine if our children are being introduced to countless people like these people that I'm mentioning to you. Annie Malone. Madam C.J. Walker was her student. She was a millionaire before Madam C.J. Walker. We just know more about Madam C.J. Walker. But what did she do with her money? She used her money, like everybody else on this list who made money, used their money to better their communities, used their money to fight against racism, used their money to build schools, to build churches. All of this is an empowering history that deserves an applause, not erasure. How does one come from enslavement and in 1 or 2 generations have the audacity to go for the biggest things in society? I'm so happy to say that Volume 1 has been very successful, so much so that, hey, we are right now, bam, we are already on Volume 2. And Volume 2, I'm telling you, is just as empowering as Volume 1. Some of the people that you're going to read here again, absolutely phenomenal individuals. From women like Biddy Mason, who once again was born enslaved. Her slave master took her to California, thinking that they were too dumb to know that California was a free state. And when things get thick for him while they're still enslaved in California, he tries to take her and her family back to Texas where slavery was legal. She got some free black friends and they went to court and she successfully sued for her freedom. She began to be a midwife and saved all the money that she made and started buying land. And the land that she bought was the land which is now the heart of downtown Los Angeles. As Los Angeles began to become more densely populated, of course, her land grew in value and value and value. And once again, what did she do with her money? She took her money to make her community better. Her grandson was left with a lot of the land and money when she passed on. He built the very first commercial building in downtown LA by a Black person. So here we have people who were expected to never achieve anything in life, who were expected to never be free, to be able to operate and maneuver and think on their own. And right after enslavement, they were enslaved in their own lives and were industrious enough to outpace white people who had been free forever. Jack Johnson, the first Black heavyweight champion. A lot of people don't know, but Sean Diddy Combs was persecuted under the Mann Act. The Mann Act was originally created for one man, Jack Johnson. Jack Johnson became a symbol of, is this, Jack? A symbol of Black virility, Black masculinity, and he did the thing that white men hated the most. Not only did he flaunt white women, he had white women everywhere he went. This infuriated politicians whose states had racial integration, miscegenation laws, anti-miscegenation laws, and all of those things. And they created the Mann Act. And the Mann Act was created for people taking women across state lines for immoral acts. So this was going to be the way in which they were going to successfully lock up Jack Johnson for flouting their unwritten rules against white women. Jack Johnson didn't care. He knocked out every white person that they put him in front of and continued to date. In fact, he married 3 white women. And they eventually did charge him with the Mann Act and imprisoned him to a year and a day for having consensual relationships with white women. You know, so that was Jack Johnson. And all of these classes, there are most of them, the vast majority of them, powerful videos, which is your actual assignment. And then we have, in addition to the videos, we have discussion questions. We have discussion questions, post and pre-discussion questions. We have quick facts, we have timelines, and we also have additional resources. And just open one we're right at. So when you go into, this is the actual curriculum once you're in it. Once you go into it, you click on begin, and all classes start with an overview, quick facts, a timeline, pre-lesson discussion questions, words and phrases to know, and then you get into your assignment. And then we let you know how much time each of the assignments are, so that if you are a teacher and you have an hour for your class or 45 minutes for your class, you'll know how much of the pre-work you can actually do. So you may just do the overview and then go right into the assignment, and then into the quiz, and then the post-lesson discussion questions. All right, but every class has a quiz, and when you complete this online quiz, if you pass the quiz, you will get a downloadable certificate of achievement from Education for Life Academy. All right, I want to thank all of you for purchasing the curriculum. For those of you who members who purchased the curriculum, I refunded your money. Thank you. I really appreciate you purchasing it, but I've just made it free for Black Achievement Fund members because I love you guys and I want you guys to have this knowledge and information. And I want you to also to share it. All right. Once again, I want to thank everyone for their support. It really, really inspires you to continue when you see that what you've created, people actually enjoy. I also want to thank everyone who gave me some really, 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 really wonderful feedback on the curriculum. I would like for you to see that we incorporated much of that feedback that was given to us. I also want to thank those of you who pointed me to schools and helped me get the curriculum into some schools and into the home schooling network. So I want to thank all of you for all of your support. I wasn't expecting this much success this early, but I'm glad that we've had it, and it just lets me know that we do want to educate ourselves. We just need to have resources that allow us to do it in a way that isn't too complicated. So I try to make the curriculum as easy as possible. I try to make all of the lessons have at least a video component so that you can at least get the full gist in an engaging video. But we also have written articles and things like that for you as well. Along with the ebooks, we have slideshows for many of the people that we highlight who do have a lot of information and things about them. So it is a wealth of information. And as you all who've been watching, I've done videos on info sessions on many of the people in volume 1, but I haven't done any for volume 2. And we're hoping that volume 2 is going to be out within the next couple weeks. All right. So once again, thank you all. To access the curriculum, once again, you go to our members only page on our website. If you've forgotten that password, just please email info@baf.solutions. And remember, we also have our monthly members meeting today at 4 p.m. It will not be live streamed on our YouTube page. So if you want to be a part of the members meeting, you're going to have to come back to our 332-802 personal meeting ID here on Zoom. Before I go, does anyone have any questions, any comments? Are there any announcements that needed to be made?
Hey, Archie, it's Summer. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Region,
How you doing?
I'm well. You answered my question, but I didn't hear you. Sorry, my phone went out. The members meeting, I know it's the same Zoom information, but what time and day is it?
It's Sundays, the first Sunday of the month at 4 p.m.
So it's today. Okay, at 4 p.m. Okay,
Yep.
gotcha. Thank you.
All right. Thank all of you guys. And please, if you haven't given to our New Kemet Pyramid 1, please do so. We are trying to raise $50,000 in the next year. So we're going to be ramping up our fundraising. For those of you who want to be a part of our fundraising, please, please, please come to our next fundraising meeting for our New Kemet project. You'll see the email for that this week. But we invite all of you who are interested in helping us reach this $50,000 in this next year to come aboard, bring all of your ideas, and let's get the show on the road. All right. And make sure that you also check out our New Kemet development blog so that you can see the progress that we are making towards building the first 2 houses of our development. The next phase for house 1 is framing. So you guys get to see the actual frame come up. All right, so thank you all once again for all of our members. Thank you for your continuous support. Thank everyone for all of your support of the curriculum. Love you guys, and I'll see you back at 4 p.m. Peace. Black Achievement Fund hug.